welcome to today's live. I'm Daniela Saioni, and I'm here for the hour to talk about my script supervisor training program. It's called the Director Whisperer Training Program, and it's for international script supervisors in the first 10 years of their career. Most of you know me, but if you don't know me, I am a veteran script supervisor. It's been since 1991, so what's that? Almost 33 years that I've worked in 10 countries, and I have been training script supervisors since 1995, mostly in Toronto, but in June of 2020, I took the program online, and it's been epic, and it's been the most wonderful experience for me because I've been going around the world trying to meet my students. I've got over 500 now in the beta cohort in 25 different countries. So it's been incredible. It's been an incredible journey for me. And I say it's been because I'm about to close out the beta cohort on January 4th, meaning I'm going to stop taking registrations on January 4th for a few months because I want to actually shoot the program the way that I wanted to shoot it in 2020. What happened in March of 2020, 2 weeks before the world was on fire, I had hired a director and a crew and booked a studio even to shoot the Director Whisperer training program as an online course, because before that, since 1995, if you wanted to train with me, you had to get on a plane and come to Toronto and find me at one of the 2 times a year that I was teaching in the classroom, which a lot of people did. They sure did. But and I never knew when those 2 times a year were going to be because I was an extensively working script supervisor myself. I never knew if I was even going to be in the country, and so it was harder to train with me until and so I decided I was about to do that, and then on March March 15th, we learned that I didn't have my studio space. I could have gone back in that fall to shoot it, but what happened in the meantime is I launched the Director Whisperer training program online without pre-recording it. I taught it live over a series of Zooms, which were originally 32 hours. Some of the people here were at that historic I get really sad when I think about it because it was the day that my favorite cousin died. Literally 20 minutes before I taught that first class, and some of you were there, my cousin died. And I spent that whole first class teaching and crying. Some of you will remember that. It's still in the recordings, right? Because part of now, if you're to join the program now until January 4th, you're still in the beta cohort. You'll see those original recordings because I was teaching it once a week for 4 hours for 8 weeks. So that was originally a 32-hour program. It's now expanded to over 50 hours. Some of you have joined me along the way later in the process, and everyone who's been in the program has gotten to see the evolution of the Director Whisperer training program. Now, the byline for it is the Director Whisperer training program. It's for international script supervisors in the first decade of their career, and I'll address all those points because I get questions about all these things. And then I will actually, if you have a question in the meantime, feel free to type it in the chat. But I want to let the people know who are not aware of what the program is, what the program does, and how I teach. I want to take as many opportunities this month to tell it to you in different ways before the last wave of the beta can register on January 4th. You can register anytime, by the way. Anytime you register, anytime anyone registered since June of 2020, they had full access to the program, whether they paid full price or whether they pay on a payment plan, you get access to the full program as you go along, and as it keeps growing, you still get it. What I started to say earlier was originally I was going to spend 20 grand to shoot in a studio, and I had all these big plans. I'm doing that this year. I'm doing that in 2024. In fact, I contacted the studio that we were originally going to shoot in because I never, I had put down a deposit of $1,000 and I had never asked for it back because we were in lockdown, and I felt really bad for the studio owners. So I reached out to the owner and said, hey, remember that money I put down? I'm not asking for it back. I'm just wondering if I could put it towards like a shoot in 2024. And she said, let's do it. So I'm very excited. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But right now, I want to tell you what you do get if you join me in this beta cohort and what's coming up in the month ahead. And I'm so super excited that I'm coming to the UK for the third time this year to hang out with my students in London next Saturday, December 9th. So if you are in London or can get to London for Saturday, December 9th, they're going to let up to 50 of us be there. So far, we've got 33 RSVP'd. Whether you're one of my students or alumni or one of my peers or just someone on my mailing list or just someone who wants to hang out with script supervisors or writers, because I'm inviting my writing students as well. My London writing students are awesome. You're invited. So just reach out to me and let me know because it's going to be fun. I've been doing, by the way, live Q&A every single week since June of 2020. I think we took 2 weeks off once because I thought I was going to end them and shut down the program. And then I reopened the program because we were running into strike times. So this beta cohort, I had meant to wrap it up a couple of times in the past 3 years. And then something would happen in the industry where I'm like, okay, I can't shut it down. Not at this price, not at this time, because once I do that shoot and version 2.0 gets released in June, it's going to be at a normal price because right now it's priced at less than I make in 1 day as a script supervisor, less than 2 days of pay for a non-union script supervisor. That's what I priced my beta at. And I'll get more into that when I tell you the story of why I started teaching. We'll get there. I have so much to tell you because sometimes people just want to tune in for like what the program is. So it is a certification program. So you go through the 50 hours. It's online, so it's at your own pace. So I have people who completed the course in 2 weeks. True story. If Jorgos is here, he was one of those people who called me or he emailed me and said, hi, I'm in Athens and I just got this job as a script supervisor. And I heard that you train people online. I start in 2 weeks. Is it possible to train in 2 weeks? And normally I would laugh like that. But I went, you know what? It now is because the program is 52 hours, but you're going to have to work every single day. And one of the homework assignments is going to take you like 12 to 14 hours on its own. There's 2 major homework assignments, but that's the big one. And he's like, I'm in, I'll do it. And he did it. And he started his job the 2 weeks later, and he did 110 episodes of a soap opera in Athens, and then he flew up to London this February, and where I got to meet him in person after his job wrapped, and he was so good they offered him a second season, and he said, you know what, I'm going to take time off, because one of the things I train my students in is not only the job, the technique, but strategy and work-life balance. Because let me tell you something, this job is can burn you out. It can burn you out really quickly. It's one of the reasons I also started teaching. There's so many things I wish that people had said to me when I had started that I tell my students now all the time. So Jorgos took some time off. And then he went back and did another job. And then he got in Greece. It's weird. They consider assistant director a promotion. It's a different job, right? In most of the world, script supervisor, assistant director, equal but different. But in Greece, and I've heard this now in a couple of countries, assistant director is like first AD is considered a promotion. Whatever. But, anyway, Jorgos got a promotion. He's getting closer to his dream of... Jorgos, am I speaking for you when I say you want to direct? I see him as a director perhaps one day, but maybe not. Many people are just happy staying as script supervisors like I was. Well, I do about a million other things as well. I'm a screenwriter mostly now and a story consultant, but I was very, very happy just being a script supervisor for so many decades. Okay, so yes, it's pre-recorded. You can go at your own pace. I wouldn't recommend that you do what Jorgos did. I wouldn't recommend that you do it for 2 weeks because it's a lot, right? Anyone who says that they can train you in a weekend. And listen, I started off training people in a weekend, okay? And I quickly realized throughout the 90s when I began training people that that's just not enough time. The thing we had in the 90s, which we do not have today, well, you have it in the UK, but most of the world doesn't have this. In the 90s, I was able to take the people that had taken a course with me over the course of a very intensive weekend, I was able to take them on set with me and train them on set. As of 2001, and I don't know exactly why this is, but somehow it coincided with 9/11, it was very hard to get anybody on set anymore. I used to always, from 1991 to 2001, always, you could ask anybody, that's how a lot of my early students worked with me. They would take my course on the weekend and then train with me on set. Now in the UK, you guys luckily have a system where you can have assistant script supervisors. In some parts of the world, that's a thing. In Canada, it is a thing. In Montreal, a little bit. I have been lucky enough to have script assistants because I fought for it, but it's not a thing that is common here. So I quickly realized as I, in the first few years of training script supervisors, that my program had to be all in. It had to take them not only from, and people ask me, do I need to go to film school to take your program? What if I don't have film school? I'm going to address all of that because it is designed for everybody, meaning whether you've gone to film school or not, you still need to take vocational training in script supervision because it's so specific, and because some film schools don't even teach you that job exists, by the way. My school certainly didn't. I will tell you that story today. But yes, it's designed. I had to make something that is designed to take someone from zero to being able to step on the floor as a key department head. And I've always taken that responsibility very, very seriously. So even before I took my program online, I had expanded my program to 4 8-hour days. People would fly to Toronto over 2 weekends and do 32 hours with me in a really concentrated amount of time, which I'm sure was overwhelming. And I know it was overwhelming because one of my alumni is Timothy. He wrote a book. Timothy wrote a book called Timothy Hunt wrote a book because he teaches at Raindance, and he was in my class hearing about what a script supervisor does for the very first time. Timothy, I can't remember what year it was, but it wasn't too long ago. And he says in the book how overwhelmed he was because I take the contents of my brain and put it all into those concentrated 2 weekends live in the classroom. When I converted the program to the online version where people could go at their own pace, it was life-changing, not only for me, but for the people involved, because they could go back to it. They could, and the reason I say for script supervisors in their first 10 years is because, yes, you can walk into it brand new and get the whole picture and walk onto set as a key, or you can come to the program after several years. And listen, 10 years is an average. I have many people who have more than 10 years in the program. I have one person who has 30 years and she is in the program, or she graduated already, but she was telling me, she has to train new script supervisors all the time, and she needed a methodology in which to train them. And, so I have actually a number of people who are film professors or other script supervision teachers within the program. So it's a very, it's a program that you can come back and revisit with more experience. And in fact, I've had many alumni who took the program like with no experience, never having set foot on a film set, whether or not they went to film school. Both cases have happened. Done the whole program, got certified, got to set, and then went back to rewatch it and saw things in a whole new light because they had the on-set experience. And then went back a third time because some of my students are now directing, as we'll talk about today. I hope I get a chance to tell you about all this. I want to tell you everything. It has been my joy to see this evolution and to see how taking the program online in a pre-recorded format, supported by there's a lot of live support. My program and my community, we are a living, breathing entity. We're ever expanding, we're ever connecting, and I wouldn't do it any other way. Because of course you're gonna have questions along the way. I can address certain things in an email. Sometimes people get private coaching with me. You can buy private coaching at a reduced rate if you're my student. And you can also buy private coaching if you're not my student, but I don't always have the time for that. What I do make dedicated time to do is weekly lives like this every single Saturday. Now, because I have to wind down the beta and shoot the new version, I need to stop at a certain point. So I'm shutting down registration January 4th, but continuing the live Q&A, the weekly live Q&A until at least the end of February, because I need to support everyone who joins that beta up to the last moment, right? So I'm not gonna, like, even if you join at the last minute, you can join today, start today, and start, join us. We're having a Q&A tonight at 8 p.m. Toronto time, which I know in Europe you'll be asleep. I vary the times, by the way, because I have students in Australia, New Zealand, India, Mexico City, Los Angeles. I have students in so many different time zones. I vary the times of the live so that at least every time zone gets a shot at attending live. But if you can't attend live and you're in the program, you can also send questions in advance and I will address them in the live and you can watch the recording. There's now, over 120 hours of recorded live Q&As that are available to everyone when you join the program and you join our Facebook group. They're just sitting there. You'll see the evolution of my face because throughout teaching this program, I've lost 60 pounds. So you'll see a whole different Daniela in the recordings than you do in the lives. It's funny to me because I've never been able to lose weight like that. And I look at the recordings and I go, whoa. And I try to come to if you live in a major film center where a lot of my students are, like London, like Toronto, like New York, like LA, like Vancouver, like Montreal. Those are all the places I've been so far to see my students. And I'm coming to Atlanta because I have a lot there. I even went to Chicago where I only had like 5 people show up to the meetup. So worth it to meet you guys face to face. Over 50 hours of pre-recorded material that you can use at your own pace and have lifetime access to. It's weekly live Q&As that will end at the end of February. It is ongoing access to anytime I do. You guys will notice probably if you've been paying attention. I do these just these live Zooms just on random topics that are of interest to script supervisors at all different levels. So, for example, tomorrow we are doing the fine art of actor whispering. You can click on the link in my bio to register for that for free. That is an update of one of the most popular free live Zoom talks I've ever given on how we work with actors of different acting styles. You can click on my IMDb profile if you want to. It's also up there in the bio of my Instagram, and see that I have worked with Oscar-winning actors. I've worked with from the A-list to the D-list, I like to say. I've worked with everybody, not everybody literally, but every level of actor, every experience level, every kindness level, every continuity level, and I have so much to say about it, about how we can get the best out of the performers and also stay sane ourselves while trying to do our very meticulous and intense job. The fine art of actor whispering. If you're not registered and you would like to be, just click on the link. It's free. There's only 99 spots, and I've asked people to let me know if they're going to watch it in replay, because if you register and you can't attend live, you will get access to the replay. Just last time we sold out, or the first time I gave the talk, we sold out, and so just let me know. So we have about 40 spots left in that. So I do those. I might still do those in between, when I wrap up registrations and when I relaunch version 2.0 this summer at a regular price. Everyone who joins at the beta program does not have to worry that they're missing out with 2.0, because you will also have access to be able to purchase that at a very reduced rate. So if you're interested, and normally I won't charge for upgrades, but this is such a massive upgrade. Like, it's massive. The amount of money I have to pay a crew and actors, and I have to write it, I have to shoot it, I have to rent the studio. It's all, we're adding one more, I'm adding about 15% new content to it. And I'm adding an editing exercise, which I think is the one thing that I'm sorely missing. By the way, this cohort was intended to be experimental, okay? It was intended for me to know, like, how effective an online program could actually be in doing what I had been doing in the classroom since 1995. And it exceeded my wildest expectations, okay? Sorry, I'm gonna cry. I have students who are shining so brightly, and I'm so I'm cheering them on, because it's what I've always wanted for this program, is to empower people. When I got into the film industry in 1991, and I tell this story on the website, and I've been criticized for blathering on my website, but it's important that you know this story because the film industry has changed, thankfully, but it's not fully changed to the point where people are not elitist. There are people who are terrified of the new generation coming up and don't want to share information so freely. This is not everybody. This is some people. I have the greatest respect for other script supervision teachers like Don Gilliam and Randy Feldman, who have been teaching the whole time as long as I have been, because I know what we go through. I know the backlash that we get from other script supervisors who don't want people to know our secrets. They somehow think that their jobs are in jeopardy if there's a whole new generation of people that are trained, and that is patently false. And I can tell you that before this, obviously during the strike, nobody was working, or very few people were working. So in strike times, of course, that's a different story. But in the past couple of years, definitely, and in the past decade, we've seen an explosion of work. And how would we have filled the roles if people like Don and Randy and I were not training people to the level that we've been training people for all these years and getting the backlash that we've been getting? I still get backlash. Do you know that because I train people on things like how to negotiate their deal, do you know that I get yelled at for that by other veteran script supervisors? Everyone should have the right to know how to stand up for themselves. Everyone should have the right to be able to strategize a career that makes them happy. Everyone should have the right to network with veteran script supervisors and ask them questions. Everyone should have access to the six-figure jobs that are in the film community. Because what happened to me was, when I went to film school, I did not come from money, okay, at all, not even close, not even remotely. I got, I had been working jobs since I was 13 years old to pay for film school, because my parents told me they weren't about to give me any money for university. That's another story. They didn't think that women needed to go to university. That's a whole other story. So I got to film school. I worked my way through film school. I won an apprenticeship program on merit. I got to set and I looked around. First of all, I didn't know what a script supervisor even was, because they didn't talk about that in film school. What they talked about a lot, which makes me angry, because I was in the first year, I went to film school in the 80s, and I was in the first year where they actually had to, and this was a thing in Canada, so not every country actually has gone through this yet. In Canada, in 1987, if a certain percentage of women applied for a program, that certain percentage of women had to be accepted into the program. So I was the very first year of that. Who knows if I would have even gotten into film school if that wasn't in play. That was why Marc Le Pen murdered 14 women in Montreal when I was in second year film school. Because of that policy, he said women took away his ability to go to engineering school. That is a sad story, and that is that's the era that I grew up in, okay? It's an era where women were told that they should not be pursuing directing, that they were begrudgingly admitted into the programs. Every day I would hear this from my professors, because the industry was not going to let women direct, so why are we bothering to educate you? That was the kind of talk I had every day at film school. I never wanted to be a director, frankly. I've trained a lot of directors, and if you want to direct, by the way, I have a new talk coming out on December 12th. I haven't even announced it except to my mailing list, on using script supervision in the big picture of your career to become a director, producer, or screenwriter, because now script supervision is the fastest path to directing and many other executive jobs. So I think it's a very important talk. I've seen many of my students do it. My ambition was always to write an act, which I do. Thank you. Thank you, Daniela, for letting yourself write an act after many people told you you couldn't do, people will tell you a lot of things. And so I started to teach because I wanted to counteract this kind of crap that was going around the industry in the 80s and 90s, okay? I got to set on this apprenticeship and I looked around. There were almost no women, and there were almost no people of color at all. I was in shock. And as I was lucky enough to start to book incredible jobs as a script supervisor, I could pay off my student debts, I could travel, which is a huge priority for me. Travel is a huge priority, still is. I said, wow, why is this such a boys' club? Why is this? Sorry. I know like 40% of my students are men now, so I'm not like poo-pooing men. I'm talking about a time in 1991 where only a certain kind of person seemed to have access to the business. And I thought, oh, this is strange. And, to train, as I was extremely lucky because I came from editing. So it was incredibly easy for me to transition from the editing room to the shooting floor. And I had gone to film school. I had the privilege of going to film school. As hard as I had worked for that, I still had the privilege of that some people still didn't have access to. Okay. And I thought, wow, there was very little, almost no training for the job. There was, what's her name? The wonderful woman in Maine at Maine Film School was teaching once a year at that time. There were a few, and it still was not accessible to the average person because you had to wait a year, then you had to get yourself to make, there was not a lot of training at the time. And so I made a conscious choice to start teaching people in 1995 to get people, different kinds of people, more access to the business, to this wonderful job. And it worked. I think it worked. Not only me, but a lot of people did this. Dawn Gilliam did this, and she's still doing it. She's still fighting. We're all fighting for this. We're all fighting to get more people access to the business. We have been for 30 years now. And I got a lot of backlash for teaching people because people perceived the jobs as finite. In the 90s, the jobs were a lot more finite than they are now. Now that it's just one new network every day. And that doesn't mean our terms and conditions go down. I mean, it does mean that if you don't know how to take care of yourself, because we are in North America, in general, a department of one. We have to stop saying we're a department of one because the work has expanded so much with all these extra cameras. One of the things you'll see myself and Dawn Gilliam and a bunch of other advocates for the expansion of our department say is we're aiming to be a department of 2 or 3. So with an assistant script supervisor and a trainee script supervisor. Until that day happens, our training programs still need to be comprehensive enough to take someone with zero experience to the shooting floor, which is exactly what my program does. And I was worried that without being in a classroom, I was worried that it was not achievable online, but it turned out to be much more achievable online. Teaching online and talking to people on Zooms and in Facebook Lives and then coming to meet them, I get to know people so well. So when people call me for references for my students, they're like, well, how can you possibly know? Well, I spent time with the work that they've handed in, and sometimes I've literally spent time with them in a room multiple times and talked to them, and it's incredible actually the amount of connection and the amount of direct time I can have with my students. And people do call me for references, and I do give them because I am fully aware of what my students' capabilities are and how that differs from maybe I know what I teach you guys. So let's break it down a bit. Why do I call it the Director Whisperer Training Program? Of course, that started as a joke, meaning I never used to call my program that. And I incorporated that name in 2020 because when I was on set before lockdown, people would make jokes like, what are you always whispering in the director's ear? I happen to have excellent relationships with directors. I often am invited into the creative process, even though we're not a creative position. It's something that I hope we can all get the experience of. And not every director is going to treat me or anybody else this way, but many, many directors do, especially the higher you get up the food chain, the more you go towards an A-list career, the more directors respect you. But also you have to take some responsibility for gaining that respect and proving that you have the goods to help a director and to do your job very well. So that is why the approach I take in those initial 32 hours before I added all the master classes and all the strategy stuff on top of that, was that 16 hours of the program are training you solely on how to work with the director, to understand their vision and support that vision, to be able to edit in your head, to be able to troubleshoot shot lists and edit in your head so that you can foresee any potential visual storytelling issues. because people don't even understand the level to which that is part of our job in supporting, because I used to say that script supervisors are the editor's representative on set. We are so much more, obviously, but in the 90s, that's how I perceived my job. I also, by the way, perceived my job as we're protecting the performance. We're protecting the actor's sacred space as performers. I very much am an actor, and I very much respect actors. And so those were the ways I used to look at my job in the 90s, which got me really far until I realized all the other levels to it the further I got up the food chain. And so I teach all that. I put it all into my program because I want everyone to have the best chance of having an A-list career in film or television. And what I did not originally intend was that so many of my script supervisors would go on to become directors. That was not an intention I had at the beginning. Although when I think back to the psychological beatdowns we used to get in film school in the 80s as females in the program, being told you'll never ever work as a female in the film industry as a director, so don't even think about it. I like to always empower the opposite thing, and what resulted, and because people got so good at helping directors, at troubleshooting directors, at getting the respect of directors, so many of my students ended up becoming directors. So what started to happen in the industry, there's a talk on my YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe to my YouTube channel, check it out. Just Google my name, find that YouTube channel. There's a whole script supervision playlist. And the very first talk I ever did on that channel, sorry, I'm gonna cry again because I had no idea the channel would blow up to what it did. Okay, I was really I just had a lot to say about this topic. The talk is called Why Script Supervision is a Path to Directing. And I talk about all the students I had and all the peers I had who went from script supervision to directing. Okay. That was sort of the way that it was right before I launched the online version of the program. And that talk is going to be finally expanded on December 12th. By the way, I think there's 30 people registered for that already, so I better announce that talk. It's called The Big Picture, Script Supervision and the Big Picture of Your Career in the Film Industry. Not that you have to want to aspire to anything beyond script supervision. One of my best students of all time is someone named Margaret in Toronto. I did the first 4 seasons of Suits, and Margaret did the remaining seasons of Suits after I left, and we also shared work on Covert Affairs. She's probably my best student of all time. And and that's a high bar because some of you know how good you are. It's a very high bar. And Margaret said to me when I first met her, I said, what do you aspire to? Because I always want to know, are people working? Because I want to help people strategize. She said, I aspire to be a script supervisor for the rest of my life. I love this job. And I said, okay. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I haven't actually left script supervision yet, even though I have a ton of other work as a story editor, as a writer, and as a teacher. And hopefully this year, as I finish my weight loss journey and I've rounding up 20 years of training as an actor, going back to set as an actor as well, I don't know if I'm going to stop script supervising. I love it so much as well. So there's nothing wrong with any of these choices. I just have realized that so many people became directors out of my program that it's a very fitting title, the Director Whisperer Training Program. People fell in love with directing through the way that I trained them to support the director in those first 16 hours of the program. And by the way, for directors, you have the option of just doing that part of the program in a course called Am I Covered? So Am I Covered is the first half of the Director Whisperer Training Program. And the reason I call it that is because you'll get to set, you'll do your job. It might even be your first job ever, and the director's going to turn to you and say, am I covered? I need you to have the skills to be able to answer that in a way that supports the director's vision and is also, makes you invaluable, right? And so, but directors also need to know that. Directors also need this training because it's especially now. I saw a shift in the world where not only did jobs start to open up for script supervisors to progress to directing, but also more and more directors would come out of the woodwork from like commercials, music videos, web series to direct long form, and they were a little bit lost. I have to say, a lot of us professional script supervisors noticed we were literally hand-holding new directors through their jobs. So I thought, okay, the way I teach script supervisors, directors need that first half of the training. The second half is all, of course, like systematizing your paperwork, getting, all the tips on how to watch the continuity. By the way, this is a true story. I've only ever had 2 people ask for a refund, and I wanted to ask them, well, what happened? Because it's such a rare thing that anyone ever asked me for a refund. Usually it's like a mind-blowing thing that, it's always wonderful testimonials and thank yous. And it turned out both those people went to set and worked a job without having gone through the program. So they bought the program and said, oh, I'll get to it, went to set and went, oh my God, this is the world's hardest job. It's not for me. The whole point of doing my program, or any training program in script supervision, is to prevent that moment on set, and listen, I still get people who have had that moment on set and then come running to me going, I can't even believe I survived that. Can you teach me how to not have that panic feeling again? Yes, that's what the program is for. So the 2 times in the history of my teaching when people have asked for a refund is because they didn't even do the program, they got on set. So please, please, please do me a favor and promise me you'll at least finish a substantial amount of the program before you venture to step on set in this role, because it is not for the faint of heart. It's not just taking notes. It's not like, oh, I know how to take notes, I can do the job. No, the director will turn to you and say, am I covered? They will ask you continuity questions. They will ask you editing questions. You need to know all this with or without having gone to film school. And I don't care if you have or you haven't. This is a very specific way of seeing things that script supervisors have. It's a very specific way I train you guys on how to be efficient on set, how to strategize your career in the big picture, how to strategize for the producer's needs, how to troubleshoot for the director, how to communicate with everybody. Communication is key, okay? Not only am I a Gemini and communication is key, but I also happen to know that communication saves thousands and millions of dollars on set even. So you can save the producer so much money and be invaluable to the producer just by communicating simple things. I teach you guys how to prep. I teach you guys what to do on set. I teach you guys about the notes. And the new version of the program is going to have all that and more. The 2 homework exercises, there's going to be a 3rd editing exercise, because I took for granted how much my knowledge of editing comes from actually editing. So I find that it's much easier to teach access and coverage when I give people footage to edit themselves, although it hasn't stopped my alumni from just rocking. So this beta cohort, let me tell you about them, because they're wonderful. I would say the majority of them are in Toronto, Los Angeles, London, Atlanta, and I have people all over, but the majority of them are concentrated in those 4 cities. And I've gotten to 3 of those cities multiple times so far. And in New York, and New York. I've been there 3 times now. And I've seen people, well, okay, let me backtrack. The last live class I taught in the classroom was February 2020, right? Before we knew the world was going to be on fire. And I looked at that group and I said, okay, within 2 years, and we didn't know what was about to befall the earth, right, with the pandemic. And I looked at them, I said, within the next 2 years, you guys are going to be making 6 figures. If you stick to this, that's what's going to happen. I want you to come back to me and tell me how much you made. And a couple of them, not all of them, because we were in a lockdown, but despite the lockdown, a couple of them came back to me and said, oh my God, you were right. Thank goodness you warned me, because it's a big lifestyle shift, right? And those people who said that to me were still non-union, so they still hadn't gotten in the union. They're in the union now, but it takes about 3 years. If you're in North America, it takes about 3 years to get into a union on average. And along the way, what you do along the way is very important. What you do along the reason I say for my program is for script supervisors in their first 10 years is because if by the 10-year mark, you're not hitting those A-list productions, you're either not in a union or you are in a union, but you're just getting like the bottom of the barrel work. And we know what that means. I hope you know what that means. But then there's something you can course correct. You can still course correct in your first 10 years. You can course correct at any time. Listen, I believe in that in life, but those first 10 years are so critical. They're so critical. And I don't believe in cutthroat competition. You know, people would say to me over and over throughout my teaching career, why would you teach people everything you know? They're just going to compete with you for jobs. Listen, I have plenty of graduates who beat me for jobs all the time, and I am happy about it. I am so happy about it. I might be a little jealous, but not really, because I am so happy about it, because it's beautiful to see that. That's not, my joy doesn't come from, you know, winning. My joy comes from a better world, a place where there are people doing jobs they love. I also love teaching very much. I hope that that's clear. And if it's not clear, come join one of my Zooms and just watch me teach you for free. And so, you know, that's never been, it's something I continually get asked, like even now, even 32 years in, aren't you worried that you're going to teach people out of your own job? Like, I hope so. I hope so. Not because I hate script supervision, because I actually love script supervision, but we get older. I'm in my 50s. I'm 54. Hi, Mark, or Jordan. I don't know which one you go by. I felt a little strange as a male being interested in, oh no, there's 40% of my students are script supervisors. Is it a female-dominated profession? Is that a myth? Can I be taken seriously as a male scripty? Stop calling yourself scripty and you'll be taken more seriously. I'm joking, not joking. Please, let's stop this scripty thing. I mean, I know there's people who are like, I like it, it's cute. There's a whole history of it being a female-dominated position, where people felt that it was okay to infantilize us by saying things like script girl and scripty. And I think they are almost equal in my book. Stop it, people. Stop accepting that shit. I know there's people who love it. You know, you want to be the endearing one on set. You can still be endearing and be respected, right? So first of all, please stop calling yourself and other script supervisors scripty. The reason that it's a problem is historically, Mark, we've had so much trouble fighting for equal pay as a department head. We are a department head, and people have trouble seeing us that way because it was a historically female position. If you saw my talk on you ran out of characters. Okay. So I know you, I didn't mean that as an attack. I understand. I know it's a shorthand that people use. I don't always yell at everybody. It's just part of my point. It's part of it. It goes into your question because, for so many years, we were demeaned, disrespected. Listen, we still are sometimes. It's mostly because there's all these new producers coming up who don't know what we do. And it's part of my role in being so vocal about, and people don't even want me to be vocal about script supervisors' rights and respect and blah, blah, blah. But I am. Too bad. Too bad. So sad, everyone. But part of that reason is the more new producers and production managers I see coming up who have no idea what we do or what we bring to the table, even for them, to save them money, the more I have to say it louder, you know, because they tend to under budget for us, or they don't schedule prep. So because it was a female dominated position and it was a solo position, even if now there are, I was just talking to a student who had been on set after the strike, and he walked into a 9-camera shoot in London. 9 cameras, no camera fee for the London. There are camera fees for in North America that they don't get in the UK. And I was like, what? And so they didn't bring you an assistant? Or, there should be at least 2 script supervisors on that. I mean, I can handle 9 cameras. If I have a choice, I'm going to bring an assistant on it. Anyway, sorry, I digressed from your question. About 40% of my students are male. You'll see many, many men in my program. That started to happen. It started to happen slowly as the respect for our position increased. Men were like, oh, maybe it's okay. But the big shift I saw, if you saw my talk on YouTube called Why Script Supervision is a Path to Directing, if you saw that talk, I talked about why I suddenly had all these men, and it's not any disrespect to the men, but they started to see the respect for the position, and they started to see that if you work in television as a script supervisor, and this is a true story, it is the fastest path to directing. So you can get to directing faster now as a script supervisor than you could in the past as a camera operator, because in the past, You could work your way up through the departments of AD or camera operator, spend all those years, and I know many people who have, working your way up to those positions, and then after several years of doing those positions, get asked to direct in television, or you could ask and they would take you seriously. With script supervision now, that trajectory is so much faster because you're not working your way up to a department head. You're stepping on the floor as a department head, unless you're, it's okay if you go the assistant script supervisor route in the UK, that's wonderful. It's still a faster route than working your way up, because assistant script supervisor, you don't do that for more than 1 or 2 years before you move up, right? So, and that's still much faster than in any other crew position. The only faster way to become a director is to direct. So is to make films and get awards for your films. But if you're talking about coming up through crew, script supervision is the fastest track to directing. And once men started realizing that, they were jumping into my programs. I noticed that shift. It was great. It made me happy, because what it meant for me was our department was finally getting respect from, as a multi-gender, I train all the genders, I like to say, because we have everybody in our program, and I love that. I love the diversity of my program as well. That's what I initially was going for. Initially in the 90s, my prices were so low, right? Like ridiculous, like even less than less than one non-union day on set. But you'll still not find an accessible. Some people, for some people, the current beta price of $6.97 US might still feel out of reach. You'll still not find anything even remotely close to that will keep you going for the first 10 years or so of your career. And like, I got a message two weeks ago. Lauren, one of my students in Canada, wrote that she negotiated her deal for her next project in February. And she wrote, "Thanks to Daniela's negotiating your deal talk, I was able to negotiate an extra $2,850 in pay on my next contract." So when you think about it, Lauren took the course in my class, live in the classroom. Back then it was only $500, and she's already made it. Obviously she's been doing really well as a script supervisor, so she's already made that money back tenfold. But like, she's already negotiated a deal that got her that much more money. And by the way, some of you were able to take just that negotiation class for free, because it was one of the free Zoom talks I offered. But I go much deeper. There's a whole bunch of talks I do in my program, and I also help students individually negotiate their deals as well. That's part of the coaching you can do with me privately, where they'll show me their deal memo and say, is this good? Is this right? Okay, and so why do I say it's for international script supervisors? I have people say, what the hell do you mean international script supervisors? I am an international script supervisor because I have worked in 10 countries. Our position as script supervisors is one that travels. It's one of the very few roles on a film set. There's DOP, costume designer, script supervisor, director. These are the roles that travel. They travel with a production. So I've been lucky enough to work in all those countries. Well, because I had a whole system for finding those jobs, because I knew travel was a priority for me, but also by virtue of the fact that I was a valued member of the director's team. So the director and or the producer would fight to get me on that ticket to however many countries we were shooting in. And that's how I did it. And that's there is a talk on my YouTube channel called Script Supervision Without Borders, which talks about some of the techniques I use to do that. And the reason it's important to train in both systems, so there's, spoiler alert, there are 2 international systems of paperwork and slating. It's not that huge of a difference, but there are differences. So it's important to be aware of both, because you could find yourself working in the British system or the US system. Sometimes people are like, why are there so many Canadians who train script supervisors? Well, it is just a fact that we had to work in both systems. We had to be fluent in both systems, the British system and the US system, because our industry was founded by the Brits, and now it has expanded because of the Americans. So we had to be fluid in both in order to work on a basic level. So that's why you'll see so many Canadians teaching internationally, because we speak the language of the international script supervision community. Now, most of my students are in the US. I have such, it's so interesting to me. My rock stars tend to be in London. Like my rock star the students who really took the ball and ran with it right out of the program are in London or in the UK, in general, because I know people are like, remember, it's not just London. Yes, I know. I get to see them in London. Let me put it that way. And I'm a New Yorker at heart, so that's why I've been to New York 3 times, and I can't wait to come back. So why the first 10 years? I talked about that. Why international? And film is an international medium. You might not all have that aspiration to travel, but many of my students do, and they do, and we should. It is part of the joy of being a script supervisor. So I told you why I began teaching, and I have seen the difference, by the way. I was just reflecting on this. One of my students just joined the union, and we were reflecting on the department and how the department has changed in 30 years. And I had trained over 50% of the people in my local who's, and they had, these are basically, I've trained over 95% of people in Ontario. So if you're in Ontario, Canada, if you're not one of my students, you're competing with one of my students. And I'm not someone who, I don't like the word competition because I think it's like negative, but you're literally out in the marketplace. If you have no training, or if you have training that doesn't involve what I train my students to do with directors, just know that there are people going up for jobs against you that have that training and they're rock stars at it. It's just going to be very hard in areas where there's a high concentration of my students to, basically get to know them. So if you're not one of my students and you can come and you're in London and you can come next week because you'll get to meet them. They are like the rising stars in London. They're making me so proud. It's ridiculous. In Canada, in Toronto, we just had our meetup. We've had 4 meetups in Toronto. So we just had ours 2 weeks ago. There's a video on this channel. 56 of my script supervision and screenwriting students were there. And just the energy of, the positivity of the community. That's what I wanted to talk about because the community is so positive. So everyone's like, I feel, even my own students are like, I feel like there's like a lot of us. Like, yes, there are, but guess what? I got a call this morning. We're still sort of recovering from the strike. I got a call this morning from one of my alumni saying, I need to cover myself on set. Do you know anyone who's available? Even people that were training with me during the strike were like, I don't believe it. I don't believe that there's work out there because they didn't see it, right? They were like, they lived through this pandemic, which was a little bit slower than then there's the strike. And now those are the people who can't come to the meetup in London next week because they're working. So I'm glad about that. I'm glad they understand what I'm saying. Anyway, there are a lot of people working that can't make the meetup next week because, the work has just come back in the UK, also in Canada. It's a lot. So I hope I get to see you guys before the onslaught, because once there's an onslaught of work, it's going to be harder and harder and harder for us to see each other in groups. Okay, any questions about the program itself? The community is wonderful. Like, listen, everyone's really nice. I can't even believe how kind and lovely people are, because this can be a very cutthroat business. And one of the ways to survive it, one of the ways that I've been able to sustain my longevity is some of the stuff I teach about work-life balance is not like letting your script career overwhelm you, but either to use it as a tool to have a great life for parts of the year when you're not on set, or to support your creativity if you're like me and you're a screenwriter or an actor or a director, and to keep up friendships and good relationships with other script supervisors, and because it can get very lonely being a department of one, which we hope is going to change, that we're not a department of one. But all this to say, we're building this, we have this community that we can draw upon, and I encourage you, whether you train with me or not, to draw upon your community, to get together in your local areas, even if we're not having like a director whisperer meetup. It's going to give you career longevity to have friends, and also to talk to each other about what you're making, about what your frustrations are,
what you need to organize. Mark, is negotiating the deal part of the yes, of course it is. Is there a limit to how much you can make, whether union or non-union? How much do you charge when you're just starting out? Mark, where are you based? It's all a function of, yes, so it is part of the program. It's not the only negotiating talk that's in the program, and also you also have access to me in the weekly lives. People will ask me questions in the weekly lives about the deals they are negotiating. So how much you can make in a day is a function of where you live. So are you in one of the major centers? You're in LA. Okay. It's something you guys will have to work on collectively in LA. But what I've heard for ultra low budget in LA, and it's a sad story, is that people are offering $275 US a day for 12 hours. That's a sad story, but it's not something you have to live in for a long time. So what I like to tell my students is, if you have to start non-union unless you're born into a union family. You got to start non-union, and in Ontario now we're looking at 400 a day average Canadian. That's Canadian. So when you do the math translating to US, it's about $275 US, but some people get more and some people get less, but the 400 as a base rate, and then there's kit and fee, and that will kit and camera fee will vary, and you should be getting 6th and 7th day. Non-union and union, you can negotiate as much as you want to. Please don't go down. I'll agree on what your local standard is. Try to get your local standard in LA to at least 300 for low budget. Plus kit, plus camera fee. Camera fee, if you don't know, is for every camera above single camera, there's a fee that they pay us. It's either $50 or $60 depending on where you live for each camera team they bring in. Think about it. They're putting out all that money on those camera teams. It's increasing our paperwork. It's increasing the amount of concentration we have to have on eye lines and multiple things that only we're watching. So that's what that camera fee is about. So it's a lot to the negotiating your deal talk. I think was 90 minutes, and it talks about all the deal points. But and when you're in a union, those are minimums. So the listings that are in your union agreements are minimums, meaning you can negotiate up from there as high as you want to. I know people who negotiate really high up from that. So as long as people will, obviously the more you get into the business, the more experience you have, the more you're likely to garner that. And obviously if you become an indispensable member of the director's team. Now everyone can feel free to reach out and email me, mondocinema@gmail.com. Tomorrow at 1, I'm doing the Actor Whispering Talk. Next Saturday, December 9th, we're meeting up in London at a pub in Waterloo. I'm super excited. Email me for the details. And then on the 12th, Tuesday the 12th at 3 p.m. EST, I'm doing script supervision in the big picture of your film and TV career. And that's a talk for anyone who wants to use script supervision as a stepping stone. And then I'm doing, I haven't even announced this one yet. I'm doing a super basic talk because I realize all my talks tend to be, someone said to me, your course is like a master's degree in script supervision because you go so deep. There's so many layers to it. You can keep coming back to it. But what about the people who don't even know what script supervisors do? I realize I don't even have that video on my YouTube channel. I do get paid by different universities and film organizations to come and speak to people about the role of the script supervisor. I have a 2-hour talk that they pay me for, and I have a 4-hour talk. So I'm going to do a 90-minute version of that talk. I guess it'll have to be just over an hour, called The Role of the Script Supervisor in Film and Television. Saturday, December 16th. So I'll be back in Toronto at 3 p.m. EST. That's a super basic talk. Most of you who come to my talks are either already working as script supervisors or you have a pretty clear idea. If you know someone who's transitioning out of film school and trying to figure out how they're going to make their way in the business, or if they are, I have a lot of people where this is their second or third career, so they come to me later in life, but they're not quite sure what the script supervisor does. Send them to me. I'll announce that. I'll send it to my mailing list. But I don't want to bombard. I've been bombarding my poor mailing list because I've had so many offers going. I just want to make sure that if you are interested in joining the program before I close down the registrations on January 4th, that you get all your questions answered, that you make an informed choice, whether you train with me or someone else. I urge you to please get training. Do not attempt this job without serious training. It is a department head for a reason. It is greatly misunderstood. It is by people in all facets of the business. It has such potential to explode your creative career, even though script supervision itself is not a creative role. We work so closely with the key creatives on every film and television show that it is a great way to launch your or catapult you into another aspect of the business if that is what you want. And I'll tell stories about that. We've been getting backlash for suggesting that maybe we need to bring script supervisors on set to train. Do you know how much backlash we face for that? So in the meantime, until that day comes, the day that we have been working towards for many, many decades now to officially get script trainees or script assistants paid on set in North America, that day has not fully come yet, although I've succeeded on a certain number of productions. I have to make the training program as thorough as possible and make sure that I'm training people. I mean, it's been working, so hallelujah. I'm very happy about that. Reach out. I'm going to be doing more talks this month. I'm here. If you're in London, I'll be there next Saturday. I'm so excited, you guys. I love London. And I didn't cry as much as I thought, so that's good. And as we get closer to, I might have to go live just like the last 2 hours until my program shuts down. It'll be quite late here though, because it's shutting down at 11:59 p.m. Los Angeles time, end of day, January 4th. So that'll be 3 a.m. here. I might just go live here from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. that night and count down until the doors close. I swear I might. And I'll probably be bawling the whole time. You can find out more about the program by clicking the link in my bio. It's bit.ly/script supervisor, bit.ly/script supervisor. All right. Thanks, everyone.